I know that there's so many women out there who are birthing big visions and projects while raising small children in this amazing conscious way. And, I just want to extend that grace and compassion to women who are really trying to hold it all, because it's not easy at all to hold all that. And that would be almost like my biggest recommendation, is to just anchor into how creativity shows up for you as a woman, and saying it's okay if right now it's not that season.
Welcome to the Well-Nourished Mother podcast. This is a show for women who desire a deeper, more mindful and meaningful pregnancy, birth, and motherhood experience. In this space, we bring so much reverence to the rite of passage that is the maiden to mother journey. I'm your host, Lauren Fortuna Flock, founder of Nest and Nourish. I'm an ex-nurse turned birth worker, holistic nutritionist, and somatic coaching student with a fiery passion for birth prep and motherhood prep that blends the head and the heart. Join me for inspiring conversations with experts, mothers, and all-around badass wise women, exploring all the ways we can nourish ourselves, body, mind, and heart, in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. This space will help you cultivate the knowledge, practices, and resources you need to be the most embodied, vibrant, authentic, intuitive, and well-nourished mother you deserve to be. So welcome. Let's do this. Do you consider yourself a creative woman? I never used to, and honestly, it wasn't until I met my now husband, Cohen, many years ago that this shifted for me. He's an incredible visual artist and tattoo artist, but it was actually him who kind of named it for me very early on in our relationship. I remember him saying to me Lauren, you are an artist. At the time, I think I was dabbling in crocheting and knitting and probably a little bit of jewelry making. And just kind of hearing him name that and say that unlocked something in me. It was like the external validation I didn't know I needed at the time. I was a dancer as a kid too. I played the piano for a little bit, and I'm a crafter. I love DIYing anything and everything. And I think I just never allowed myself to accept that I was creative because it didn't look like other people's experience, or it didn't look like whatever weird image I had of a truly creative person. I realized my definition of artist was so narrow. Really, it was like this imposter syndrome experience. But that was really a bit of a turning point for me, just having someone else recognize that in me. So yes, I am a creative being. And I've had this episode idea, this topic idea in my head for so long because I experienced so much tension in early postpartum around creativity and creating. You might even name it resentment. Before giving birth, I was actually making a ton of jewelry and having little sales on Instagram and just really loving it and loving the stuff I was making. I have a jewelry workshop set up in my house. And then after birth and with the intensity of having a newborn, that really fell to the wayside. And honestly, I still haven't really picked it up again. Obviously, I've shifted to other passions. But at that time, I had such tension. I had this desire to go create, to make something with my hands, to work on something. I had ideas flowing, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't run downstairs and bring my newborn. There were too many tiny little pieces, or I just didn't have the physical energy, even though the desire was there. And once she was in bed, I could never get into anything deep enough and really let my creativity loose before having to go tend to her again and feed her. And of course, at the same time, my priority was to be super present with her and attentive to her needs. And sometimes this push and pull just really got to me. This push and pull of desiring to make something or create something and not having the space and capacity to do it like I used to, while also wanting to be this really present and attentive, gentle, connected mother. It took many months to really relax into this and shift my perspective about it. I now realize that this was definitely part of my matrescence, my becoming, letting go of old paradigms, old ways of being to make room for the new. But at the time, it felt really lonely. I never heard anyone else really talking about this in their own experience as a new mother, specifically around the creativity portion. So kind of, again, like with so many of the things I've experienced as a new mother, I thought I was the only one. Now my whole perspective on this idea has shifted, like I said, and I can't wait to share this conversation with Nikki Hollett with you. Nikki is a mother to two incredible daughters who are now 9 and 11, living on Vancouver Island with her arborist husband. Over her decade plus of mothering, she has co-created multiple creative businesses, always in service to following her creative urges while still prioritizing being fully present at home with her daughters. In recent years, since prioritizing being an unschooling mama, she took a break from business. She's now beginning the process of fulfilling her lifelong dream of being a birth worker. During a deeply healing journey over the past few years, she's now weaving her art with her shamanic gifts she has reclaimed from her lineage. Nikki has so much insight and wisdom to share with you about this topic of balancing creative urges with the physiological needs of postpartum. We weave together a really beautiful conversation that touches on the role of intuition, ancestral healing, human design, and cyclical living. You'll leave with a new perspective around the cyclical nature of creativity and how there is a season for everything. But before we dive into our conversation, one tiny reminder. Come join the conversation on social media. I want to hear your opinion, your insight, your thoughts on these episodes and these topics that I share. You can find me on Instagram at Nest and Nourish. All right, let's get into it. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Lauren.
It's so nice to chat with you. I've been following you for a little while now on Instagram, and I'm always in awe of the beautiful art that you share, whether it's through your photos, through the words that you share, or the various other art forms you seem to birth into this world. It's all just a beautiful expression of who you are. So thank you for sharing your art. I'm wondering if you can start us off by just telling us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know. I think maybe our paths crossed last year. We were both in the money boot camp, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember sensing you and feeling you. And yeah, I've shared a lot of different things over the years, and I've done a lot of different things over the years. And most of it has been shared on social media. And just as like a basic background, I'm a mother of 2 daughters that are 9 and 11. So I've been well initiated into mothering for over a decade. And the entire time I've been mothering, I've been also a self-employed artist. And that really is my background. I spent a year living in the Kootenays training as a silversmith. And I always had this vision or this knowing that I really wanted to be at home with my kids. But I also knew I had a purpose and this deep desire to do more with my life. And so I really felt like being an artist and learning these skills and having home-based business would really allow me to do both. And it's been quite the journey. I've done a lot of different things. I am no longer a silversmith, and I've had many creative ventures over the years. I've taught myself many different mediums of art simultaneously while walking the path of mothering, and it has not been an easy path. So that's often reflected in the words I share and the art I create. It's really motivated from this place of not separating mothering from how I show up as an artist. And, you know, I've learned a lot the hard way doing that. So, and I'm in a current new expression of that art, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think, you know, I consider myself a creative as well. And it's funny you said silversmithing. I dabbled a little bit in that a few years ago as well. Yeah. And yeah, you know, I have a 2-year-old. And so, you know, I'm fresh in this mothering realm. And I found that in those early days, I was feeling a lot of resentment not towards my child, just towards this struggle of trying to follow my creative urges while also being a fully present mother. And yeah, I felt like there was just a lot of tension involved. There's a lot of tension and being pulled in different directions and not knowing how to kind of
I guess, harness that creative energy and maybe put it into my child rather than trying to
Mhm.
separate it. Like, I really loved what you said about, yeah, like it's not separate being a creative and a mother, you know? Can you speak more on that? Or how did
Yeah.
you navigate that?
Well, I will say my first year of mothering, that first initiation, I'm really happy that I was fully present. I wasn't taking on any creative projects, but there was a part of me that also felt this tension and this like death process of letting go. And that is, I think, essential. So no matter what we're letting go of in those early days of mothering, whether it's the first 6 months or years, even, I think there's a part of us that has to die, and sometimes that is our creativity. But for me, um, what I see as creativity as a mother, like I said, is not separate. You know, the creative urges, as you spoke to, um, that's what it really is. It's this like overwhelming sense of I need to create something. And when we are, initiated into motherhood, that is like the purest form of a creative urge. And so we're kind of riding this huge wave of creativity for a lot of us. And some of us, even myself, like I wasn't really tapped into my creative potential pre pregnancy and birth. I knew I wanted to be an artist, but I wasn't anchored into the frequency of it. And so, of course, I was so like motivated in a way I never had been. But of course, it was so incredibly difficult to actually put out what I wanted to put out without sacrificing a part of myself or sacrificing um, the relationship I have with my children, or the relation in my marriage or my social life. I really do believe that at some point we have to look at where we're at in our lives and decide what's the most valuable thing to feed our creativity into. And for me, I learned the hard way that I was so focused on creating something outside of myself that I missed this opportunity to create within my family and to channel those creative urges into my mothering, into my home. Um, and so, yeah, I really learned the hard way that it's okay to step back. It's okay to let go of that resistance for a season, because it is truly a season. I can say from being 12 years into it, that there will be space in the future to really feel more complete, with our creative urges and to see things through to the end. Um, but yeah, in the beginning, it was very difficult, in all honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said about, that little death. And it's true. It's kind of you're letting go of, what you thought maybe being a creative meant when you were a
Mhm.
maiden. For me, it was I could go at any point in time and run downstairs to my workshop and create jewelry, or I could, whatever
Mhm.
the urge was, I could, try to create some business idea. I had lots of those then,
Mhm.
at any time without, having any responsibility to kind of hold me back or keep me still. So yeah, it's interesting to, like with everything with becoming a mother, yeah, you're reorganizing what it looks like. You're reorganizing what your life looks like, what's important, what gets to hold your time and energy and focus.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's letting go of what just can't be present right now. And like you said, knowing that there will be a season, another
Mhm.
season in the future where maybe it can come back around. And, I'm glad you mentioned season, because that reminds me, usually I start all of these off by asking this question. So I don't want to forget to ask you,
Mhm.
but can you tell us a word or phrase to describe your current season of motherhood or of womanhood?
Mhm. Yeah, I love that question. I think that um, really allows listeners to like tap into what frequency we're at, which can be really hard to sum up. And um, I would say that the season of mothering, or as, even as a woman, in my life right now, I'm in this place of, I would say, living my dream. And in terms of like actual seasons, it feels very like, harvesting what I've spent a decade working towards. And in some ways, like the living the dream is like I had this dream as a mother for where I wanted to be, um, maybe at this point. And for most of that time, I was always in proximity to the dream, but never felt worthy of fully stepping into it and living it. And I would always just be on the periphery, really struggling with how to um, fully actualize what it is that I desired as a mother, and how I wanted to show up, and as an artist as well. And I would say in the last few months that really is, when I look at where I'm at now, where I'm standing, I'm really living in alignment with that dream for probably the first time ever, really.
Mm, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Can you share more about what has kind of led you to that, to this, more embodied?
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that when I became a mother, and even before being a mother, I was around a lot of people who had come out of the Waldorf school system, and I really recognized it as something that would have really supported me as a child, as an artist, and as someone who was didn't fit in to mainstream culture even as a kid. And for most of my early parenting, pre-school age, I had this um, really dream of being involved in this community, but I always really felt unworthy of it. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I didn't feed my kids healthy enough food. I didn't buy them couldn't afford the right clothes. And it was really about this outward identity that I felt like I was never living up to, but aspiring to, and really, depleting myself and really dishonoring myself. And um, so yeah, we just enrolled our children in the local Waldorf school, which was a huge, like a huge realization of like how far we've come to feel like we're in a place financially, or even just willing to make the hard choices to support our children in the season that they're in right now, while also being gentle with myself that we had to go through this journey of being in the public school to homeschooling to now stepping into an aligned community. It feels just like a really beautiful representation of other aspects in my life where I'm learning to step in and not be limited by the mistakes that I've made in the past as a woman and as a mother.
That's incredible. Well, I want to celebrate you because like you said,
thank you.
Like you said, it's the choices that you've made, right? And the sacrifices that you make to kind of step into this life that you want. And yes, privilege plays a role in all of that, but choice is always there, right?
And it seems a small thing, but to me it's like it's everything. It's a representation of all the initiations I've gone through and the trial by fire that I've walked through, and the pain I've suffered and the lessons I've learned, and the voices within me that I've silenced and now listened to, and I encourage all women who look at choices they make as maybe small and inconsequential. They're all important, how we give birth, how we educate our children, like how we feed ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to our children, it's all important, and it's a journey. We're never going to get it right, but it's when we look back from where we're standing right now, I think when we look at the steps we've taken, it's our own unique path that we're here to walk. And yeah, I'm just excited to be in this season where I can really feel like proud of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that makes me think of just intuition, right? Like you said, you kind of silenced this voice within you for so long. And, I think for me, becoming a mother has heighten my own intuition so much.
Mm,
It is now, almost the main voice that I'm listening to,
mhm,
where that cognitive knowledge piece is there, sure. And it plays a small role when I'm making decisions. But more than anything, mothering for me has shown me that trusting myself, trusting my family, my husband, you know, trusting our values and our own intuition is what has led to really the best outcomes for us, right? Like knowing that we're following what we believe and what feels good and it's so important. And I think a lot of women are just so disconnected from that. And
mhm.
it's hard to start to reconnect to that. I talk about intuition almost in every episode on this podcast. It's funny. Like it's just constantly there. It's constantly a topic on my heart. So yeah, can you share a little bit about, your own relationship to intuition in your motherhood experience? I know you've kind of touched on it, but
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying I think that all women are gifted access to intuition, but I do agree, just like creativity, intuition really comes online during pregnancy and birth. And I am so amazed to see how many women that are using those portals to step further into their own unique intuition. Um, but what I do see and what I've experienced is something shifts when we give birth. And those first few years, we can maybe anchor into our intuition, but we start to lose it again as our children approach school age. And my own experience with intuition from the beginning as a mother was really tested during pregnancy, especially with my second daughter. And but I always have had a strong intuition. I've always sensed things. I've often sensed things that are more not to say dangerous, but like fear-based intuition, where I know something is not healthy, or that person, there's something off with them. And in pregnancy, that was difficult because it's like you're not only sensing for your own self, you're sensing for this other being that's nesting inside of you. So I found being like a highly sensitive person, pregnancy, very challenging, and really retreated from the world. And that really impacted the early years of my mothering, was that my intuition was so heightened that I retreated into myself and retreated from the world. And I think that is often postpartum depression and, the really difficult transitions into motherhood. It can be because we're so highly sensitive and we don't know who to trust and we don't have support. And it's just better to retreat. And that was my experience with my first daughter. Was I just did not feel safe in the world, and I felt like I needed to protect her from everything. And it really depleted me, and it really harmed me in a lot of ways, because I didn't have anyone showing me what a gift that was, and no community really that was showing me not just what I should be avoiding, but look at all these amazing resources, or look at this community of mothers that are living in a different way. All often we see is we don't want to exist in this reality, but where do we go? And so that's why I think community, and especially now with online communities, there's so much more available to women that go through that awakening during early motherhood and during pregnancy. And so that was kind of my introduction to intuition. And of course, over the years, I've built a much more grounded relationship with my intuition. And that really came through no longer being so disembodied and not knowing what to trust. Was like the biggest thing, was learning that, oh, it's me that I get to listen to. And that for me has definitely been a journey. I still obviously struggle with it at times. And it really came online again, like I said, when my children were in school age. I really reactivated that knowing of, I'm not living in alignment with this voice within me that is telling me where I'm supposed to be. And it was definitely a painful awakening that time around too.
Mm. That's such an interesting perspective. Hearing about your experience with intuition in your first pregnancy, second pregnancy, it being so heightened that it actually kind of caused you to turn inward. I think we hear about intuition all the time in the online world. Like, it's such a good thing. It's great. Everyone needs to listen to it.
Buzzword. I think it's not that it's misunderstood, but it's so much more complex, and everyone's experience with it is totally different. So, and not to say that isn't valid, and if I were to share about my intuition now, I would share it from a totally different place. But when I talk about early motherhood, it was not easy to understand and to listen to.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think has helped you over the years to learn what to do with it? Is it being in community with other people? Like what has kind of helped you kind of reconnect with it in a way that is, nourishing for you personally?
Yeah, well, I think that the biggest thing that I could say with intuition is our intuition is rooted in our body. And so for me, acknowledging how disassociative I was, how disembodied I was, I would say, the first step in acknowledging that there was work to be done. Because I think if you're in community with people, if you're learning about intuition, it doesn't really matter if our bodies can't hold what is coming through to us. And so you're kind of doing this parallel work as you're strengthening your intuition, because every time you listen to it and you say yes to it, it gets stronger. And if you're not doing the somatic work, the inner child work, the trauma healing work, the ancestral work alongside that, you're always going to find your capacity to hold that intuitive knowing to be not expansive enough. And for me, it was really just coming to terms with how actually having a really strong intuition was part of the reason why I was so disembodied, but that I needed, instead of focusing on wanting to say yes to those intuitive knowings, I needed to first learn how to listen to my body. And everyone's a little bit different in terms of how they receive intuition. But I think a lot of us, it is through our body. And so I think the biggest way to understand where we're at in that is, are we dealing with chronic pain? Are we dealing with illnesses? Are we dealing with health issues? And starting to listen to where in our bodies are starting to talk to us, and just listening to that, listening to, asking ourselves, asking our intuition, what does our body want to eat? Where do we want to go for a walk today? And in terms of mothering, how do we want to show up today as a mother? Do we need to give ourselves spaciousness to do some arts and crafts because we haven't tapped into our inner child much recently? And so it's just starting that conversation with our body, I would say, for me at least, was the biggest catalyst in terms of starting to receive more intuition, and then seeing what happened in my life when I started living from that place versus this external reality of how I should be mothering, how I should be showing up, how I should be creating as an artist. Yeah. And it's an ongoing thing, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's so true. We try to take this abstract idea of intuition and look at it through a cognitive lens, right? It's like, well, how can I learn about intuition and learn how to hear it and use it, when really, like you said, it's an embodied experience. For most people, it's through the body that you feel these intuitive hits or however it comes to you. And for some people, it is just a knowing, and that can feel more, cognitive, but that's still, it's on a somatic level. It's in the body. And like you said, it's learning how to reconnect to your body. It's creating safety in your body first, which then allows us to increase our capacity to experience intuition
Yeah.
and emotions in general, all emotions in general.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned some ancestral healing. I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about that. Can you kind of share a bit more about that?
Yeah. So I think ancestral healing for me has been a huge catalyst for my own mothering. And I think about the collective time we're living in is very uh, polarizing. And we are constantly navigating, you know, are we going to be showing up as mothers this way? Are we going to be showing up as wives that way? And just like creativity, just like intuition, we get so distracted from what is outside of us. And to me, the most powerful form of healing that I've done is realizing that, I have my own stories, I have my own lived experiences and my own traumas, but I'm a part of a lineage of people who have gone through so many things, so much trauma. All of us have ancestors who have, um, you know, lost loved ones, who have been abused, who have lost and buried children. And through the study of epigenetics, like we know that we inherit these memories from our ancestors. And especially as women, I really strongly believe that this idea that like our egg was within our grandmother's body, so the things that even just two generations back they experienced, we also experienced in our bodies as well. And so sometimes when we're dealing with like a threshold or a blockage of healing and we just don't understand why we can't move through it, sometimes it's not even really about us and our own experience. It's about something that happened to our mother or something that happened to our grandmother or even further back. And through just starting to listen to the body and listening to the intuition, we can start to peel back the layers of time almost to really start to see, okay, my mother experienced this. And now, maybe consciously I'm trying to live a different way, but unconsciously it's still showing up in my patterns of behavior and how I treat myself and how I talk to myself, how I, treat my children. And so I really do feel like ancestral healing, through support of amazing practitioners on my that I've experienced, has been almost the like hugest catalyst, I would say, in terms of healing my own relationship with my own mother. And of course that then now impacts how I mother, and it impacts how she is now in relationship with her mother. And I spent years trying to have hard conversations and doing the work. And I realized on so many levels it was like an energetic tie that I had to her. And so yeah, really doing that work has helped me to release a lot of heaviness, a lot of karmic weight that I've just been lugging around for for a long, long time. So that's like my experience with ancestral healing. And I know there's so many different um, lineages and practices that one can explore. And I was really gifted by just meeting a really amazing practitioner and now friend who really introduced it to me at a time where I was really struggling with integrating some old patterns that I just actually specifically around creativity last year that really opened up some really unexpected healing experiences.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, I could feel my own body kind of reacting because, you know, I come from a lineage of, my maternal grandmother lost relatives in the Holocaust.
Mm.
She also buried a son who died in a car accident when he was only 18. It's like one of those would have been enough, but, multiple traumatic experiences that were just, I don't think ever really dealt with. And you can see it in the way that she's lived her life, and she's still alive and with us, and she's 95 years old and,
Wow.
incredible. But there is a lot of trauma there. There is a lot of wounding there that I can see how, like you said, it's held in her body, in my mother's body, and in my body without even really knowing what it is, or how it's kind of weighing me down karmically, like you've said.
And it impacts how she probably mothered her daughter, which then impacts how you were mothered, right? So it seeps into our unconscious and into our daily life, if it's left unchecked. And it might not look like abuse. It might not look, on the surface like much, but it's those core beliefs, it's those stories that impact us. And yeah, they're in our bones, but they're also in our lived experiences too. It's just not always easy to see. But when we start to excavate our family stories, and if we're lucky enough to have relatives, grandmothers alive, it's an amazing opportunity to start to ask questions. If we have that kind of relationship with our own mother, to ask her, what are her memories of her grandmother, and how did she raise, her mother, and what are the things that stand out? Because when we have these memories, these childhood memories of our grandmothers, they're there for a reason. And I think that they're amazing little breadcrumbs that we can follow along the way to start to understand ourselves a little bit more, and to start to be almost collaborators or co-creators with that story, instead of just being victim to the circumstances of our ancestors that we, have no control over. But like I mentioned, karmically, I think it's everything that, our ancestors experienced, we're here to also experience. And it's my belief that our generation in particular is here to help heal those stories more than ever before. So our daughters don't inherit the heavy ones, or if they do, it's through the lens of we've done the most we can to help shift things for them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Having a daughter, that feels like my biggest purpose really is to, help not mold her, but help, create a container that allows her to be her best, truest self. And I don't want all these things weighing her down. And they're a part of our lineage, but yeah, like, how do we frame them? How do we work with them? How do we heal them so that, she just gets to be her biggest, best self,
Yeah, it's the mission, mine as well.
Yeah. I know that you're working with a new art form. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would love to. I also wanted to circle back to, there was some stuff that wanted to come through around creative urges, because I know that's, the season that you're in. And I know that, and of course this is going to tie into like where I'm at right now in terms of my own creativity. But, and I'll give, just because I know that you are a little bit into human design. I'm a manifester. So my relationship to creative urges, I just want to put a little disclaimer out there, is going to be totally different than a projector or a manifesting generator, or, and if you don't know your human design, that's totally okay. But I just want, using the language of creative urges is very specific to me now that I have a little bit of an understanding of my human design. And it's really helped me to let go of some judgment I had about how I showed up as an artist over the years. So when I get a creative urge, it is so incredibly strong. And they're often not little urges. It's like, how am I going to change an entire system? Or I'm going to write this novel, or, like very big creative urges. And for many years, I lived fully ruled by those urges. And then they would just disappear. And I would be left with half-finished projects and really feel awful about it. And my husband always, makes jokes about how I, start things and can't finish them. And over the years, I've learned, like working in collaboration and learning how to rest and learning how to live through like being a cyclical being has all really helped support me to feel more at peace with these urges. But so I just wanted to like share that, how we receive creative urges is going to be totally different. And some people get these slow and steady, sustaining creative visions that they can slowly work with and build on. And sometimes it's like me, where it's just like out of nowhere, something huge comes in as like a download. And the most powerful thing that I've found is just like anchoring into how creativity shows up for me versus scrolling Instagram and being like, oh, look at that person who's launched their 6-figure course while nursing a 6-month-old baby. Like, how do I do that? Right.
Yeah.
Like we're all victim to that in this modern world. And I mean, I've been self-employed as an artist for, before Instagram was what it is today, but I certainly still was always kind of motivated from an external place of what are other people doing? How are they showing up? And not listening to what really was wanting to move through me and how it wanted to move through me. And I know that there's so many women out there who are birthing big visions and projects while raising small children in this amazing conscious way. And I just want to like extend that like grace and compassion to women who are really trying to hold it all, because it's not easy at all to hold all that. And that would be almost like my biggest recommendation, is to just anchor into how creativity shows up for you as a woman, and saying like, it's okay if right now it's not that season. And I spent a lot of years really not listening to that. And right now I'm in this place where I'm like, I have the energy, I have this knowing of when to show up and when not to show up. And but I had to take like years off of just being present as a mother, like recovering from being like a compulsive, like just compulsively saying yes to all the things outside of myself that was also being influenced by, more aligned creative urges. And so now I'm at this place where I'm creating something that I'm really excited about, but from this understanding of where that energy is coming from. And it's not coming from anywhere outside of me. And if it's not resourced properly, then, I know where that's going to take me. And it's, I've learned the hard way enough time. So, yeah, we can circle back around to what I'm doing right now is I'm really merging my love for women and mothers and healing, the healing arts of, like I said, ancestral healing has been so important to me, and really anchoring into the body and anchoring into the womb and anchoring into our menstrual cycles and how our body is manifesting all those things, and weaving it into an art form that I've spent a lot of years kind of on the periphery of. Like I said, I'm in this season of living my dream. I've always loved fiber arts. And over the years, I've dabbled in different forms of dyeing fabric. And I was always really scared of merging into the natural dye world because it felt too intimidating. And a lot of that self-worth stuff was coming up around, it'll be too hard. I don't know how to do that. And so this last 6 months or so, I've really stepped into that and am creating something I really love, which is these beautiful hand-dyed shawls that are created from a place of embodiment of each woman's womb story and each woman's connection to their body, connection to their own story, in their story of their grandmothers and their mothers. And so something that they can wear in a sacred way that is a representation of the healing work that we're all doing as mothers and as women in this time. And it feels very much a culmination of a decade's worth of creating art and healing and living from a place of having to learn the hard way that, it took me a while to get to where I am today, that I'm really, really excited about.
And I've seen some of them. They look absolutely
Thank you.
gorgeous, just as an external thing to look at, but knowing the intention and the healing really that goes into making them and creating them. That's just, yeah, that's beautiful. My body like lit up when you were saying that. It liked that.
And it just kind of dropped in, like we talk about living and like holding intuition, right? It's like, oh, I can hold this now. I can hold this vision. And all of a sudden then I can look back and be like, oh yeah, that thing I did in the past totally makes sense because it was moving me to this place now. And maybe, you know, the season of my life where I learned how to dye fabric was a really messy season. And I had a business that did not go well. And I thought it was a failure, and I thought I was a failure, yet it was
Yeah.
a part of my story that got me to where I am today. And so yeah, in that sense it was exactly what I needed at that time, and I needed to be at this place in my life to be able to receive the fullness of where I'm at now.
I love that because I have a similar kind of experience with creativity where it kind of comes in waves. And, as in human design, as a projector, I've learned that my energy it's not constant. It kind of comes in waves in general, and learning how to kind of ride those waves and learning how to rest and redefining what rest means to me. All of that has helped me learn how to harness my creativity more. But I love what you said about just all those little breadcrumbs along the way have really led you to creating this beautiful offering now. And that's kind of how I see all my millions of unfinished half ideas. And, even, I went to school for holistic nutrition at one point, like 7 years ago, and thought that was the thing, thought that's what I was going to do. And now in this new season, I'm seeing how what I learned then is helping me, focus in on this idea of nourishment for mothers. And yeah, it's just incredible how the little breadcrumbs kind of lead you to this, yeah, this place at the right time, when you have the capacity to hold it, right? I didn't have the capacity to do anything with it then, and I do now. So yeah, it's like relearning what creativity means, using human design and all of these other kind of frameworks to help. And you spoke a lot about like cyclical living too. I feel like this is, maybe it's just the world that I'm living in right now, like my kind of biased view of the people I'm interacting with, but this comes up a lot. And to me, I feel like it's what women want right now. It's what we're all kind of trying. That's very general, but it's what it seems like. We're all kind of trying to reconnect to this cyclical way and redefining what success means, and learning how to create lives that allow us to be our cyclical beings in all ways, literally with our bodies and menstrual cycles, but also with our energy waves and our creativity waves and our intuitive waves, all of it. And it's just, yeah, it's beautiful.
I think it's the essence of being a woman. And I think when we give birth, our womb space gets activated, in a different way, right? Our creativity comes online, our intuition comes online. And one thing I also that I was thinking about even this morning was how when we're in that first season of motherhood, we don't even ovulate, right? So we sometimes go, anywhere from, a few months to even like a few years of not ovulating. And just living by that way for me is like, I don't really do any creative project when I'm not ovulating. So most of now that I've learned, how to work with my energy, when I'm really struggling and everything is feeling really resistant, and I start to look at where am I at in my cycle, if I'm in my luteal phase or menstruating, I'm like, nope, drop what I'm doing, like go rest, go do something else, go nourish your body, pivot to doing something that is more like nourishing for my being. When I come back to that other phase, the follicular phase or the ovulation phase, I'm like, wow, I feel so much more activated. I have so much more energy. My creativity and intuition is so much more aligned and like felt. And so I think when we're in our early initiation of mothering, like, we're not ovulating. We're not meant to be putting all this energy outside into anything outside of just nourishing our baby and nourishing our bodies. And that's how I kind of anchor back into this, like it needs to be sourced from within us. We can't be looking outside and seeing what other women are doing and how they're showing up with their creativity and how they're honoring their creative urges, because their bodies are different than ours. And I think that anchoring into, yes, things like human design, yes, like these kind of systems that can be really supportive. But for me, like, and this comes back to becoming more embodied, is living from this place of really honoring my cycle and listening to my cycle. And then from there, like the gifts of like actually being able to see how much more creative I can be, how much more intuitive I can be, the more I listen, the more I nourish myself, the more I, honor each aspect, not just the ovulation cycle or the juicy, expressive and playful side. It's like I'm honoring the heaviness, I'm honoring the grief, and I'm honoring the shadows and all the stuff that's there too, right, and present, and that also impacts our art and our creativity and our intuition. It's all there for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Back to what you said about, being in early motherhood and we're not ovulating. I remember being in that place and, I got my cycle back quite early, like 4 months or something. But I remember in those 4 months feeling very odd. Like it felt very odd to me to not feel cyclical. Like it felt like I was stuck and like I couldn't wait really to get it back. Like I wanted that up and down back, which is funny because, when I was young, I just thought, having my period was the absolute curse. Like, why? I can't believe this is what I have to deal with for my entire life. And of course, now that is not the case. And that is not how I hope my daughter learns to relate to her own cycle. But yeah, I had this feeling of feeling stuck. Like I wasn't completing a cycle. And once I got it back, yeah.
Well, just how much are we influenced by the outside world of, we should be, having our ups and downs. We should be completing things. We should be doing all these things instead of what we really need to be doing is just months and months of rest, and that is very uncomfortable. It's not modeled for us in society. And it stirs up a lot of shadows. It makes us want to run away for the most part, to really be held in that space of deep nourishment and rest and not having something external to focus on, and that I hope for my own daughters that they will be able to embrace that. And I know when I was in that season, the idea of like staying in bed for 40 days, I never did that. I think it would have been honestly the worst, most torturous experience, Now, if I were to go through it again, it probably would be difficult, but I would see and I would understand the magic of it and the benefit of it, not just for myself, but for my child and my partner. And then we get to show up more nourished and more energized. And I think, if you get your cycle back earlier, it's an indicator that you're ready to show up. And if it's longer, if it's like a year in or a year and a half in, that's for a reason too, right?
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. I'm realizing as you were speaking, like for me, it was such a push and pull with my creativity in those early months because I was trying to kind of override my body's own, right? Like I was trying to be an attentive, focused mother, but I was, still being pulled, like you said, to these external ideas of creativity and, I should be doing more for this business that I've decided to create while, freshly postpartum. Great idea. So it was really like kind of settling into this idea that no, there will be a season for that. And this isn't it. And I'm realizing just now at like 2 years postpartum, I've, recently night weaned. We're still nursing, once or twice a day, but since significantly reducing that, I've mentioned this to another friend recently that I can feel viscerally my energy shifting from being so internal and only on her to the outside world again. Like I can literally feel like my energy is shifting outward again. And I've got this newfound energy to interact with people again and, reach out to those relationships that I just haven't had the capacity to nurture, so I think the struggle was because I was trying to override this natural physiological shift that my body knew primally, but I was trying to kind of override it and speed up the process, right? And I wanted it now. I want to be creative now. I want to do my project now, when everything was telling me that there will be a time and it's not right now. So settling into that and becoming okay with that it's hard, but it's
congratulations.
Necessary.
I know the weaning is such a huge shift for baby and mother, and it's like another little death that occurs, and it's a gift. Just like when we move out of maiden to mother, our children slowly become more separate from us, and I'm experiencing that now with having pre-puberty age children. That as more space is created in my life to nurture myself, there's a grief that comes up every time, there's a transition, and, that happens all the time. But I think there's those moments in motherhood that should really be honored as rites of passage for both baby and mother. And I think the weaning is a huge one for sure.
Yeah. I've actually been thinking about just that so much lately, that, weaning as a rite of passage. It really is. It's a little death. And then it's a whole new, you reemerge as this whole new dyad, more separate and with energy outward and experiencing the world in a whole new way. So, yeah.
Or sometimes it's, welcoming in a new child, or maybe that's the new business, or, I've always joked that I would never have a third child because my businesses were like my third child, and there wasn't enough space in my life to be able to have a third child. And, although they're different, obviously I'm not saying that my business or my creative projects are equal to my children, but they require a lot of us as women, and, a lot of sacrifices, just like we make in mothering, and being supported in that, and in community and in our families, just like when we need support postpartum, or we need support throughout mothering, we need guidance, we do need that when we start to step into our power as women, as entrepreneurs, as creative beings, and that's definitely something that I didn't have in my early years, that I maybe have now, that really is sustaining me in ways that, I didn't even know I really needed. Just like I didn't know I needed a support of a community of mothers, until much later.
Yeah. So, Nikki, where can we connect with you?
You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Medicine Mother, all one word, lowercase. I'm kind of sporadic on there. Sometimes I go through little social media detoxes, usually once every few months, but and it's very much a reflection of my always different ways of showing up in the world. So right now it's very much rooted in the shawls that I'm working on, but I'm also really excited to, in September, move into offering more support in fertility awareness and connecting in with cyclical living and the shamanic ways that we can anchor into our body through our menstrual cycle to do the healing, to, birth those projects, to call in a child. And so, it's always going to be a little bit different in that space, but that's where you can find me.
That's it for episode 9. I can't believe we're at episode 9 already. This idea of creating a podcast seemed daunting and terrifying at the beginning, and I can proudly say that it has been such a beautiful experience. It's opened me up to new levels of safety in expressing myself and being seen. I've met incredible women along the way, and I can't wait to see what the next 10 plus episodes bring. So I will certainly be celebrating episode 10 as a big, big milestone. So thank you for being here, for listening, And if you loved this episode, please go rate and review the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening from. That's it for today. See you next time.